sleepyheads. Hello, sleepy people. Hello, sleepyheads. Hello, sleepy people. It's another noisy day in my neighborhood, but even so, I really wanted to come on here for a few minutes today and answer some of the questions you asked me. So thank you for leaving your questions. If you don't know what I'm talking about, a couple videos ago I said that I would like to do a small Q&A, so this is the A part of that equation. Hi, it's me from the future. Not really, it's actually me from the past, obviously, but it's me from the next day. The day after I filmed most of this video. Just popping in to say that I, at some point in the video, changed my gain, so the audio is going to tick up a good amount. And the reason I didn't just edit that audio down to match all the clips preceding this one is because I like to have the audio be as loud as possible for people who don't have headphones, and then people with headphones can just turn it down. But there is going to be a spike. It's going to get a little louder now, so I just wanted you to prepare yourself and adjust your volume as needed. Okay, here we go. It's going to get a little louder in 3, 2, 1. So the first question is from Hillary, and it says, what was your first experience with ASMR? I remember when I was very young, maybe 4 or 5 years old, my neighbor and I sat on her steps while she brushed and played with my hair. A little later in elementary school, there was a girl who was painfully shy, so when she was called on to read, she was super soft-spoken, nearly whispering. I was always so relaxed when she spoke. I definitely have a lot of similar experiences that come to mind. Classmates nervously giving presentations, or playmates giving me close personal attention as part of a game. But my first memory of ASMR, I think, was a workbook that we had to work in when I was in 2nd grade. And it was blue, and the pages were made of a material that is more similar to like wrapping paper. And it was really crinkly. And our teacher would give us the instruction when we opened to a new page to press it down so that it wasn't flopping around, because we were going to be working on that page for the duration of the lesson. So it would be the whole classroom pushing along the spine, except not the spine, like the inside, whatever the inside of the spine is, the middle of the book. They'd be pushing it down, and it'd be making this big crinkling sound all around me. And I'll never forget that, because I was so young and definitely experiencing ASMR and not knowing it. Although I will say, when I was in kindergarten 2 years before that, there was a girl whom I particularly liked to watch play, because something about how she would chatter to herself and how she would handle the play foods, the plastic play foods in the kitchen set. That was always super relaxing, and I felt really weird that I was like, I knew I didn't have a crush on her, so I couldn't understand this effect she was having on me. And it was an oral thing, you know, it was the ASMR. And I also liked when my cat Trouble, he had some sort of issue where he was always purring. He never stopped purring. Maybe he was just a really happy cat. our cats generally would stay in the basement. So sometimes I would slide open the pocket door that led to the stairs down to the basement, and I would just sit on that top step and I'd slide the pocket door closed behind me, and Trouble would inevitably come padding up the stairs because there was carpet on the stairs, and he was a really plump black tabby, and he would sit next to me and sniff at my hair and sometimes try to eat it, so I had to kind of keep it away from him, but he'd be purring really loudly in my ears, and I loved that. And then sometimes my sister would read books to me when I was really little, and I asked her to chew gum while she read them to me because she was on the swim team at school, and her swim coach was named Mr. Hamlet, and he would give out this very chewy, very tasty blue raspberry flavored gum. And so during that time my sister was constantly chewing on that, and one day she was reading to me while she was chewing the gum, and I just loved the way it sounded. So from then on I always asked her to be chewing gum or eating candy, maybe sucking on a Jolly Rancher while she read to me. So those are all the early experiences I can think of. So Don't Know asks, have you ever thought about doing an ASMR skincare or makeup routine? Yes, definitely. I just have to find a day where I haven't already gotten ready, because often I will tutor or have a Zoom meeting or be doing some sort of virtual facilitation, and then I'll be making ASMR videos later in the day. So I need to either find a day to film where I don't have something like that going on beforehand, or get up early enough to film my routine beforehand, which would be pretty early some days. So, but definitely something I want to do. Don't Know also asks, what are some of the ASMR channels that you frequently watch? Well, a lot of the channels to which I'm subscribed I love. I'm not a casual subscriber, although when I went back through my subscriptions I had 3 or 4 that I definitely have never subscribed to. So I don't know, not even ASMR artists, but random channels on YouTube. So but I went back through and ascertained that everyone to whom I'm subscribed is someone I know and someone whose content I enjoy. So just to name a few, I really love Sungmook, maybe Sungmook, I'm not sure. And I don't think that she's posting anymore, but probably one of my all-time faves. I've been really enjoying Trinity J ASMR, super tingly. Bella Bree has commented on here before and has really nice videos. Definitely check her out. I, of course, love some of the big hitters. I love Gentle Whispering, Maria, Masha. Been watching her a long time, and as was the case for many people, my first aha moment that ASMR was even a thing, something that someone would deliberately produce, was watching her ASMR makeup video. I also love an Icelandic woman named Elizabeth. Maybe it's Elizabeth, but I thought it was Elizabeth. And her accent is amazing, and she has some really relaxing, de-stressing videos. Definitely recommend her channel, although I'm not sure how active she is anymore either. Who else? I think Grace V is super relaxing, and I love how simple she keeps things. sometimes thinking of her is what keeps me going, because I would love to be making videos with more elaborate setups like gentle whispering or goodnight moon. I love playing characters and doing scripted things, and I do have a lot of cool knickknacks, even though my space itself is pretty plain right now. I have a lot of would-be props, but a lot about my setup right now just isn't conducive to anything that elaborate most of the time. So I know that Grace has similar constraints. She's alluded to neighbors and having to edit around certain disruptive sounds. And I get the impression that she just sort of hops on when she has an opening, like I do. And I definitely aspire to post as often as she does, in lieu of being able to make the more elaborate videos. But I consume a lot of ASMR, so there's that crow. He's actually, I looked it up, he's serving as a lookout right now. When they are cawing from one spot, like on a power line, they are performing the function of a lookout for their murder or their larger group. So yeah, I consume a lot of ASMR. I'm sure I'm forgetting people. River ASMR, I really like River ASMR. So yeah, if I think of any more, I'll definitely mention them in future videos. I also really like watching the W Magazine ASMR interviews with celebrities. I think that series is super fun. Of course, some are much better than others. Not always by way of the celebrity having some prior understanding of ASMR, as was the case with Cardi B. Sometimes they can be really relaxing with a celebrity who doesn't experience ASMR and doesn't really know how to do it, especially if they're willing to just give it a good try. I find Sarah Silverman's interview super relaxing. I was disappointed when it first came out. I didn't find it relaxing, and at some point it was like I was able to tune in and really give it a chance, and now I find it super relaxing. I think she speaks really slowly because she thinks that's what will work best, and at first it seemed a little awkward, but now I find it very, very tingly. And I also really like Olivia Munn's, especially the part where she goes through the X-Men comic. But I also like when she's tapping on the helmet. I also really like the Fuse videos that do a similar thing, and in particular I love Ugly God's ASMR segment, or the video that he did for Fuse. Ugly God. Shows to watch during quarantine. I'm definitely a movie lover, like as a unit. I love the movie. I may actually take a break and come back when he's a little less active. I have to admit, I haven't been watching a lot of TV. I got really into Queer Eye. I tend to be really late to the party because I like to have a one-on-one experience with a show. So if everyone is watching it, if it's really big in the zeitgeist, then I tend to stay away until the dust has settled somewhat. I don't know why. I think I get intimidated by the hype, and I just prefer to watch things on my own time in a kind of little bubble. It's funny, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, I don't watch a lot of TV. I have watched a lot of TV in my life. I watched a lot of TV shows very devotedly with my mom growing up. We'd get really into a show together and watch every episode. When I was really young, we'd watch them like on the DVD sets. And when I was older, binge watching was more of a universal thing, but we were always binge watching. And we watched everything under the sun. My sister would watch sometimes too, so I've gone back and watched lots of older shows, newer shows, all of them, like anything you could name, like Friends, Will and Grace, Frasier, Ugly Betty, Downton Abbey, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, 30 Rock, The Office, Parks and Recreation, like all the big hitters I've seen. I've also gotten really into historical dramas, like I loved, it's very fictionalized, but I watched all of The Tudors. I've watched all of Sex and the City. I watched that way too young. And Peaky Blinders. And I know everyone says that if you like historical dramas, you should watch The Crown. I haven't gotten into that yet. Again, probably because it's really popular right now, and I'm much more likely to get really into it a few years down the line. As much as I like dynastic history, funny enough, I'm not super interested in the British monarchy. I am in terms of history, but some people see it as a celebrity culture, and I feel that way more about Princess Diana, but maybe because I like her as a figure so much, I'm not as keen on the monarchy. I'm so sorry if this is like a really inappropriate thing to say as a person who isn't from the UK, but I also have an uncle whom I love very much, and he's a Scotsman. He's very Scottish. He wears kilts to family weddings and has a very discernible brogue, and he is not into the monarchy, so maybe that made an impression on me. So, Don't Know Then Asks, favorite snack. Oh my gosh. So many things. I've mentioned that I'm really into celery with peanut butter. I also love plums and cherries. I'm a big sucker for stone fruit, so I love the summer. For snacks, I've also been having these sort of sorghum puffs that are really spicy called Dragon Puffs. I think the brand is Vegan Robs. I'm not sure. I love to have like an ice cream bar any time of day. Like I could have one when I wake up in the morning, and I have on several occasions just woken up and gotten a Magnum out of the freezer. I really love the Magnum almond bars. Those are so good. I'm trying to think what else because I'm a big snacker, so probably a lot of other things. I love to just warm up a piece of sourdough bread. That's really good. Just like 20 seconds in the microwave. I don't have a microwave where I live now, but that was a favorite thing to do growing up. I'm guaranteed to think of a lot more once I'm done filming. Just something a little random. I've been wondering, but what time do you film? I film whenever I see a window or hear a window. Anytime it seems like there's not a lot of commotion, people are mostly indoors, there aren't leaf blowers going, lawnmowers, not a lot of helicopter activity. Most days I have to avoid around midday and around dinner. So I don't tend to even attempt past like 6 because people have dinner at such different times that it tends to be noisy all the way until about the time I go to bed. It's great to film when I'm up early in the morning. I usually don't have free time in the morning, but I think like before 9 a.m. would in theory be the best time. Unless I were to try to film like in the dead of night, which I know a lot of ASMR artists do. But I do have a lot of daytime commitments that keep me locked into a diurnal circadian rhythm. So yeah, flower crown haul, definitely. I'll have to do that soon. I think I have about 6 or 7. It's not endless. I've rotated the same few crowns now, but I think it would be fun to go through them all at once. That's a nice idea. Thank you. Eva asks, and I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Eva asks, for the Q&A, have you ever watched any TV shows or films recently that you really enjoyed or that made an impression on you? I think that Palm Springs made an impression on me with Andy Samberg because it discusses time. And I did think that the movie, it was really charming and really well done, but I thought it left a lot on the table. It had a shorter runtime and it could have used more time to explore some of the things it had touched upon in a little more depth. So maybe that was the fun of it. Maybe it was supposed to be breezy, but it left me yearning for a little more. And not in that way where you're like, oh wow, like chef's kiss, perfect. That left me craving more, but it didn't need any more. I thought it needed a little more. But I will say that it definitely made me think, because two characters are, and this is the basic premise, so hopefully it's not what would constitute a spoiler, but two characters are caught in a time loop together, and they're able to behave in this way in their life, but in this time loop where nothing really has any stakes, because the way you might hurt someone or offend someone, it just disappears overnight. So it asks, that tree in the woods question, it asks, does doing bad things or hurtful things have a negative impact on you independent of the shame or the consequences that arise when someone is reacting to what we've done and, I don't know, chastising us, or something bad happens, we get in trouble, whatever it is there a point to living with kindness? I think it asks the question at various points, is there a point in trying to do no harm and live kindly even when there are zero consequences? Is there a consequence, for us outside the harm we do to other people? Like, is the action itself inherently harmful, whether or not it really happened for the other people involved? It's a really wacky question because of the time loop thing, but it also reminded me of quarantine, because there's this sense of endlessness and the same day lived over and over, that at once you don't feel like you have a lot of control over a trajectory. You're not moving forward in any way like the characters in the movie. But then there are enormous stakes with the people with whom you are stuck in this loop or in quarantine. So suddenly you're getting all your social interaction and all your validation and support almost entirely from this one person or these few people, all your human contact. And similar to that, the characters don't have any stakes with anyone else in the movie. They can't build a relationship with anyone but each other. So that opens up a whole host of interesting questions, in my opinion. I also watched 3 Identical Strangers, that documentary about if you don't know, you should go find out. And at first I thought it was kind of spinning its wheels because I didn't know where it was going to go. And I was like, okay, we get it. I thought they were just really hyping up the initial premise. But it actually went so much deeper and so much further to a really surprising place. So I would recommend that, especially if you're interested in, human phenomena and psychology and twin studies, nature versus nurture, the ethics of science. Yes, I definitely recommend that. And as far as TV shows go, as superficial as it sounds, Queer Eye, Jonathan Van Ness, has really made an impression on me in terms of going a step further with self-love. Like, I've been asking myself the question, in what ways am I withholding love from myself? Like, in what areas in my life am I not giving myself love and support? I tend to err on the side of very stern with myself. So, I don't know, the way that Jonathan Van Ness in particular speaks to people about their self-worth is blowing my mind. He's a treasure, and you probably already knew that. So, Ivy asks, what are your top 3 favorite movies? This is so easy just because I've been saying it for years. I have a lot of movies that I love, and that's probably why I haven't been watching a lot of TV in quarantine. I do watch more movies than TV. I know we are in the golden era of television, and television is definitely on par with, if not exceeding in many cases, what's coming out in movies. But I love movies as a medium. You know, I love the form of a movie. I love the 2-hour window to try to accomplish this arc. I love the constraints of it, and I love being able to see the whole, you know, not need to dedicate 20 hours of time, but be able to zoom out and look at this. Sorry, I have hair on my nail. Being able to see both the woods and the trees. I think movies that develop their characters really well, you're seeing the trees, you're getting super close up with the characters, but you are ultimately able to see the woods, and the director is too, you know, a lot of the time while they're making it. I think we hold movies to higher standards because it's like, you didn't know how to end it, you didn't know how to wrap that up, like, it was finite, and you had time to plan that. With shows, it's a little more like, okay, you meandered your way over the course of 6 years to that ending, and a lot changed in that time, so we get it, you lost grip of things a little bit, that's fine. I think it's really impressive when people analyze characters in shows. There's a lot more to work with. Like, someone wrote a paper about how the character Ross on Friends, combined with how we regarded him as a society or as a culture, predicted the fall of the world, or like the end of the world, the ushering in of the Kardashian era, post 9/11, anti-intellectualism, and a greater superficiality as part of our ethos. So hopefully that made sense. I think that's super impressive when people do that, but I feel much more adroit at doing that with movies, and I love to do that with movies. So top 3. So that doesn't necessarily mean my top 3 though are like masterpieces. They're just movies that I love to watch and love to unpack. Except one of them is super light. So maybe not so much like unpacking, just I could watch it over and over again, and it always makes me feel good. So my 3 favorite movies are The Silence of the Lambs, The Fugitive, and That Thing You Do. I know that it seems like a really strange selection, but it's just what's true for me. I love The Silence of the Lambs. Clarice Starling is a feminist icon, and I could go on and on about that movie, and that is something I could really unpack. And then I love The Fugitive. I get so hyped. I love to watch that and could watch it over and over again. And That Thing You Do just never fails to make me happy. The moment when Faye is giving her little speech, don't want to spoil it, but that moment gets me every time. But I have lots and lots of other very loved movies. I love some that are very popular, movies that are beloved by almost everyone. I love One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I love Amelie. I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I love Big Fish. I love Secretary. I love The Painted Veil. I love the Indiana Jones trilogy. I know there's a 4th movie now, and fuck it, I love that too. Just because any Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford, I will watch. I love David Cronenberg movies. I really enjoyed A History of Violence and Eastern Promises. I love The Lord of the Rings, and any of the older Tom Hanks movies I find super heartening, super relaxing. I love Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, Turner and Hooch. I could watch any of those. And That Thing You Do, I think, represents that whole genre. Like, not that Tom Hanks movies are a genre on their own, but I think That Thing You Do is my favorite, and I needed one of my top 3 to be a Tom Hanks movie. I love Tom Hanks. I love Harrison Ford. I love The Sound of Music because Christopher Plummer is a treasure. Beginners is great. Julie Andrews is a treasure. The cinematography is really beautiful. It's just a delightful movie. I love Ingmar Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage. I do like to watch older movies. I grew up watching older movies because my mom was obsessed with Cary Grant. So, Arsenic and Old Lace. I love Hitchcock movies. I like Shadow of a Doubt. So, yeah, lots of movies. Any good movie, really, and I do tend to have a lot of opinions. It's funny with, like, Eastern Promises. I was way too young to see that, but we watched it because, as usual, my mom had a crush on someone and wanted to watch a movie with him in it. She loved Viggo Mortensen, so we watched that, and it was only slightly traumatizing. She also loved Mikhail Baryshnikov, so we watched White Nights. I think I owe a lot of my love of movies to the fact that my brother sincerely was passionate about movies. Very macho movies, but a lot of really good ones. And my mom just had lots of celebrity crushes, so that worked out nicely. My sister loved period pieces when I was growing up, so I was watching things like Jane Eyre and Pride and Prejudice, so that was a nice addition to my sensibilities. You know, she loved Little Women, things like that. And my dad was pretty opinionated. He liked what he liked, and he didn't shop around too much. I feel like he liked, like, Casablanca and 10 and the Pink Panther movies. So I do have a soft spot for, like, gangster movies. So, not soft spot, that sounds weird, but I tend to find them interesting. I think because I find them really scary. Eastern Promises, The Drop, Gangs of New York, things like that, and that ties nicely into my love for Peaky Blinders. I will say movies that I tend to find too scary, movies that push me past my comfort zone a little bit, deal with war. And I'll watch them because there are a lot of fantastic war movies, but they tend to really bum me out. I was really scared of Saving Private Ryan growing up because my dad and my brother watched it like in the middle of the day one time when I was home. And it was like a bonding moment for them, but I was really little and I could hear that very intense beach scene, you know. I think it was a D-Day scene. And the audio from that is so well done. It's so immersive. It's also scary that many of you probably know, but they had hotlines open for veterans when that movie was in theaters. And I obviously, as a young child, hadn't been through anything like that, but I found it terrifying. I found war terrifying. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on from movies because I really could talk and talk. Train spotting. I'm gonna stop. Next up, Stephen asks, your robust vocabulary enriches the listening experience and suggests you have done a lot of reading. What sort of things do you read? That's a great question, and also a big one. I do like to read and write. I'm not reading or writing as much as I would like right now. And I think if you're serious about writing, you definitely need to be making time to read as well, because one really informs the other, and it's kind of like to paint, you need to spend most of your time looking, so to paint well, and so that ratio is really important. And that was instilled in me pretty young. When I was growing up, my father would make us, over the summer, the three of us kids, he required that we read for 2 hours every day and write for 1 hour. And I think that was his way of saying that if you're going to pick one, make it reading. So you can learn from others. So I did a lot of that growing up every summer, 3 hours a day of reading and writing. And I really loved to read, but it also was required in my household. I think my sister and my brother are actually bigger readers than I am. I kind of jumped to the writing part. I wrote a lot growing up, and I read a lot too, but they really, really read a lot. My sister is the person from whom I get my love for Agatha Christie books. Great vocabulary in those. And some books that I really remember loving in my life have been The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath made a big impression on me. I now see it through a lens that's a little more critical of Plath, who was quite anti-Semitic. I actually thought at one point that she was Jewish because of all of these references she made, especially in some of her poems like Lady Lazarus. But quite sadly, she is not, and was actually in her diaries very anti-Semitic. I still think that The Bell Jar is an astonishing work. I think it's a really important portrayal of mental health issues and gender. Yeah, but it's not something I've revisited since I was a teenager. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, that was a really great reading experience to which I related a lot. It was about a dysfunctional family. It is about a dysfunctional family. I think it's really good to read if you have any issues with codependency and finding a middle ground where you're holding the people in your life who have harmed you accountable, but you're also seeing them as complete people and not just outright vilifying them, but having compassion for them as well. So I think that's a big thing that we often have to do in our adult relationships with our parents, and that book explores that gorgeously. I also remember really loving reading Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being. And again, there are themes in that book about time and the weight of our time and the stakes of our time that continue to blow my mind. I'm going to stop there for time's sake. But the book I finished most recently was Until We Reckon by Danielle Sered. It's about mass incarceration and white supremacy and how they interrelate. And it's fantastically researched. It's basically one big thesis paper, but really well written, really engaging. And it additionally deals with what causes violence, what creates cycles of violence in families, in societies. Why do people hurt people? And how can we create a criminal justice system that heals people, rehabilitates people, while also centering survivors' experiences and what they wish for the people who harmed them, their wishes, their preferences, their needs, and what produces the best results in terms of creating safety, creating a safer world for everyone. And it touches on the criminogenic effects of prisons. So it's super interesting, and it's amazing because I was reading it for a book club before there were such widespread calls to depopulate jails. So it ended up being incredibly timely. Not that mass incarceration is a new issue. It predates even the Clinton administration's tough on crime push, but mass incarceration had a huge uptick during his administration. It's really interesting where I'm from, even to learn the local history of imprisonment. And it's something I've been able to discuss with people of all political alignments, and from both sides of the spectrum, if you see things along a spectrum. I think people think of this as a super left stance to take, but actually I've spoken to people with completely different political views than mine who have had experiences with the criminal justice system at times when they were struggling in their lives, and actually feel very strongly that there's a lot of room to improve. So yeah, big spiel. Sorry, I just can't seem to help it. And I'm sorry sometimes if I'm talking about contentious things or things that upset you, if that's antithetical to your ASMR experience or the experience you desired. My thoughts run away with me. Okay. How does your moderate OCD affect your personal relationships? That's a good question, a big question. I had a relationship. It's been okay with family. There's a lot of OCD in my family, and I think a lot of undiagnosed OCD. So it's not as if anyone can fault anyone else for having intense preferences. I will say that there's someone in my family who's a lot messier than everyone else in my family, and it's something we've each dealt with, but I probably have the hardest time with it, so I need to set some boundaries there. But I've also had to do a lot of work in my life around not letting the OCD dominate me. I think a common misconception is that OCD is that set of issues you see in a person who's really stuck in their ways or entrenched in their preferences, very my way or the highway. There's something called obsessive compulsive personality disorder that speaks more to those issues, where it's more of a problem for the person around the afflicted individual than it is for them themselves. Like, they don't identify as particularly distressed unless they're not getting their way. OCD, on the other hand, which is what I experience, I knew I had a problem, and I felt a great deal of distress even when I wasn't interacting with anyone. And it can negatively impact relationships, like all mental health issues can. And I needed to ask myself hard questions about the kind of life I wanted, and needed to lean into exposure therapies or exposure response therapy. And in terms of cohabitating, I knew fairly young that I wouldn't do well living with other people. I had a roommate at camp when I was younger, a bunkmate, and she was so sweet, and I thought the world of her and really liked her as a person, but she would touch her feet a lot and sort of pick at them, and she would do things that were very, like, charming in their own way, but like difficult for me. She would be eating fruit gummies, like fruit snacks, and she would just stick some of them on the bunk bed. Like she'd have the lower bunk and she'd stick them on the underside of my bunk. Not to upset me, she was just very free and very whimsical and very intuitive, like with herself, very responsive to her own whims. So I was like, I couldn't like a person more than I like this person, and I am really struggling to cohabitate. So it taught me that I probably needed to live alone. And then I ended up living with a mix of romantic partners and friends over the years. And living with friends always worked out pretty well because we just had a lot of respect for each other's boundaries. Intimacy is always greater, of course, in romantic relationships, and I had one partner who made my OCD feel like a burden, made me feel like a burden for having OCD, and my OCD in that relationship was the worst it's ever been. Big surprise. And then in a later relationship, I was with someone who provided a lot of support around it and would read articles to better understand and, I don't know, just try to speak to me where I was with it. And I was already doing a lot better in my life because I'd taken some time with therapy by that point and really applied myself to getting better and being less compulsive. But even so, I can't help but think that my OCD was even less of a problem in that relationship because of the enormous support that I got. And that's not to say it's anyone else's responsibility to help us out of or through our mental health issues, and some of them don't go away. So out of or through, those are misleading words to use around it. But it's not someone else's responsibility to help you with it. I needed to do a lot of the work myself, but just having someone who doesn't make you feel like a burden, like you're a pain to live with, but instead made me feel like my OCD was sometimes even contributing something, because I am a very clean person with whom to live, and I do put a lot of effort into creating a home. I'm really good at building a home. And these days, living with someone, I work really hard to find workarounds for the OCD. So you'll see this room is fairly bare bones. That's because sometimes if I'm choosing between an aesthetic that I enjoy and simplicity, something that's easier to clean and makes and frees up time for living, for just enjoying life and living, I'll opt for something more minimalistic, a more minimalist approach these days, just in the name of simplicity, because I think the worst thing when you have OCD and you're living with people, or you have intimate or you have close relationships, is to think it entitles you to make someone else live life by a lot of rules. I know some people can't help that when it gets very severe, but I like to collaborate with someone, knowing that they're going to try to honor my preferences. I like to try to simplify and reduce the number of my preferences, if that makes sense, just to meet them in the middle. So again, I could go on and on about that. That's probably a whole other video, but that's a really good question, and the truth is that it has impacted my relationships. In some ways, it's made some relationships worse, but it's also strengthened some relationships, because if you are made to feel like a hindrance because you have mental health issues, that tends to be symptomatic of something wrong in the relationship. But if it's something that you can work out together, life is full of things to be worked out together. Shared space, finances, boundaries, shared goals, shared struggles. If you want to live a life with people in it, you're going to find yourself in a lot of three-legged races, so to speak. So the outcome of that can be very negative, or it can be very positive, and that comes down to the specific dynamic between two people, both of whom are contributing a lot of different factors, both good and bad. So, to oversimplify, in this time of social distancing and isolation, what do you do for amusement? I make ASMR videos. I write when I can motivate myself to. I like to write screenplays, and I like to do narrative, and I like to do essays, short stories, narrative stuff. Oh my gosh, I forgot for the question about books. I love F. Scott Fitzgerald. I know a lot of people do, but I especially love his short stories. If you haven't read Babylon Revisited or Winter Dreams, I highly suggest both. Babylon Revisited, just a warning, has a lot of themes around alcoholism. It takes place at the beginning of the Great Depression, after the Roaring 20s, and there are parallels. Someone is at a low point in his life, the protagonist is at a low point in his life, at the same time as the party, so to speak, has ended for everyone. Of course, disproportionately impacting low-income people. Fitzgerald tends to write about wealthier people, but that story has its merits all the same. I think it's really beautiful, and Winter Dreams feels like a precursor to The Great Gatsby, which I love, but something about Winter Dreams hits me in a whole different way. It's more elegiac, it's more of an elegy. I guess that's just Fitzgerald, but there's something about it that's about what we lose when someone we lionize or just adore, someone we love when we're young, fades away, that a piece of us dies, that the piece of us that loved that piece of them dies. And that special kind of grief, because there's that schadenfreude of wanting everyone from your youth to be over the hill and for you to be the victor, so to speak. But that's not true for a lot of people. A lot of people find it painful to watch life take down the figures that were aspirational for them when they were young. So, sorry for the detour, but I recommend reading those. I'm sorry if it's disorienting to see my furniture shift around every 15 or 20 minutes, but I'm stopping and starting a lot. So, the last question from Stephen is, in this time of social distancing and isolation, what do you do for amusement? So just a reminder of the question that I was on before my side rant. I make videos, I write, I try to cook new things occasionally. I get really into organization projects. I also love to research, I love to research whether it's learning about a historical event and going super deep into that rabbit hole, or just researching the best lower lash mascara. I am a researcher. I love to find answers, find solutions, find the truth, as close to an objective truth as I can get. I love to help other people when they have a question, and I'm very limited personally in terms of what I know and what I can do, but something that I think I'm good at is finding other people who can do a good job and vetting them, or putting them in touch with someone who needs their services, or helping someone answer a question they have. I love doing research around history and around movies and their making, and around psychology, etymology, art history, all kinds of stuff. I think we all do that though, right? The Wikipedia rabbit holes that we all go down. So, what else? I've been liking to take walks. I have such an appreciation of my neighborhood right now, and I miss it so much. I miss walking to the movie theater. I miss walking to restaurants. I miss being able to walk around certain areas that are now too high pedestrian traffic. I miss being able to go to certain parks. I miss getting my nails done, as silly as that is. I love my nail technician, and I love my lash technician too. These are simpler times. I've been going on long drives, trying to drive out to some places in nature where I can have solitude, because a lot of us in big cities have the same ideas right now. So we're all congregating along the same hiking paths, the same trails, the same beaches. So it's definitely an activity in and of itself to try to find somewhere off the beaten path, to find somewhere out of the way, somewhere someone else hasn't already thought of. And lastly, I think, like a lot of people, I'm amusing myself in these times lately with learning things that I thought I'd never have the time to learn, like how to cut people's hair, how to do my own artificial nails, how to make sushi, stuff like that. I've been doing projects around my apartment. I hung some hooks up in my closet. I've been weatherproofing areas like around my air conditioning unit. Just anything that I need to fix, I've been honing in on and trying to fix. I think a lot of people have been doing a lot to improve their living space, because right now it's like that's all we've got. So cost-effective ways to spruce things up a little bit, that's the name of the game. Okay, next question is from Brat's Babe, who always leaves nice comments. Thank you. Brat's Babe asks, who is your biggest style inspiration? I wish I could think of just one person. I think I absorb a lot from a lot of different people. I think that movies growing up were a big part of my sense of style. I never wanted to dress in the way that was trendy for people my age at school or just in my area. I always loved boots, like lace-up boots. I think because you see those a lot in like period pieces in movies. I loved red carpet style, so it's kind of like things you would see in the movies and things that you would see on the red carpet. So always a little bit more intentional, more glamour, more cinematic. So I was never as trendy. You know, you see like Olivia Palermo, you see a lot of people who are so good at putting outfits together, and I think I always leaned a little more toward costume, like looking a little costumey. Like I loved Colleen Atwood. I had a lot of certain people whose work in movies I loved. So it's hard to say. And you know, I would watch old movies, and there was a lot of glitz and glamour in a lot of those. So yeah, I really wanted to be dressed like someone from a movie. And my mother's mother would give me a lot of her very posh vintage clothing to wear as dress up when I was younger. So that didn't help to make me any more like subdued style-wise. But I never felt like I was very easy breezy. I think if I had to pick, I love Cher. I think it's that kind of Follies or can dancer aesthetic that I like so much. Playing a lot with different textures, playing a lot with nudity, because I think nudity in fashion is gorgeous. Like, I really like it when people play with that. I think that Rihanna does this really well. I know it's Rihanna, but Rihanna. I think Rihanna is kind of like a modern day Cher. If you compare their styles, I think that they are doing similar things. Now, I also love florals. I always have, but I think that's just because I like flowers. I always liked a bit of that va-va boom movie starlet style. And I love to take fashion risks. I'm just usually too nervous to call a lot of attention to myself, but I'm the sort of person that will probably wear my hair and my makeup the same way every day, but then wear something a little flashier. But it's funny, when I'm not going for that high femme, very frilly, very decadent, very glamorous aesthetic, I go a lot in the other direction, and I really love to play with androgynous fashion. I love menswear. I love a lot of the materials. I have never been happier on Halloween than when I dressed up as Tommy Shelby from Peaky Blinders, and I had to buy a boy's suit, or a boy's waistcoat at least, just to have one in my size, because a lot of these items aren't made for women's bodies, which must be really hard also for trans people who like to dress that way. But yeah, I love a really tailored outfit. I think Zendaya plays with this a lot, but the ultimate icon for women in menswear is Katharine Hepburn, and I think she's probably also a style influence. She was a family friend. My grandmother was painting on a beach once on the East Coast and looked down the beach a ways, and it was pretty foggy, but she could discern someone else doing the exact same thing, painting with an easel set up, just painting the water, with the tide almost coming up to the easel. And she walked over to introduce herself and to acknowledge this coincidence and this kindred moment. And it was Katharine Hepburn, because of course it was. And they stayed friends for the rest of their lives. They would write letters to each other. So Eric asks, what country in the world are you from? I'm from the United States. I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. Could you please elaborate on your apparent love for flowers and plants? What makes you appreciate them so much? Maybe you're studying to become a botanist. Wow. My father had a big green thumb. He was big on having us help with the garden each year, because you're doing your planting on a seasonal basis. So we helped a lot with that, and we had a lot of different flowers and trees, just different flora in our backyard. And he was always big on identifying them. So I do know a lot of names, not compared to many people, people who do this as a serious hobby or for a living, but compared to the average person, I probably know a little bit more. But I do love them. And my dad loved cut flowers, and my mom hated them. She just wanted the flowers to be left alone. So she liked potted things or planted things. She loved orchids and chrysanthemums and sweet pea and roses, peonies, irises. My father loved to plant rhododendron and different types of lilies like tiger lilies, snapdragons, pansies, cyclamen, petunias, azaleas, all kinds. So, also funny enough, his mother did study botany. She was a violin virtuoso or a virtuosa growing up, and her father was very into traditional gender roles and didn't think that something as flashy as a life in music was appropriate for her, and that she needed to find something more academic, less active. I'm not really sure what his issues were with her being like a classical musician, but it just didn't feel appropriate to him. So he actually took that away from her, which I think made my father very sad. But my grandmother then studied botany, and she was always a very creative person. Loved to craft and loved to paint beautiful paintings. So that's how she met Miss Hepburn. Miss Hepburn. Ophiliac says, Ophiliac asks, do you have an Instagram or a Twitter we could follow you on? And Kyle similarly asks, are you on social media? I am. I actually made an Instagram like a year or so ago just for my creative interests, for ASMR, and for some other things. And it kind of went dead. I never really tried to build it up because I got busy and I abandoned the idea of doing ASMR videos, funny enough. But it's still there, and it's something I'm going to be using a lot more. The reason that I haven't really been mentioning it or plugging it is, well, firstly, I always feel a little embarrassed doing things like that. I don't tend to, I don't think I've ever asked you to like subscribe or comment. I probably should encourage those things just for the growth of the channel, which would be, in theory, in everyone's interest here, but I'm just not good at that sort of thing. I'm not good at self-promotion, for sure not good at that. The other reason I've been a little quiet about my Instagram is that I do intend ultimately to use it for a variety of purposes, because I wanted somewhere I could express myself. A lot of us have had the same Instagram for years and years, and at this point I have old bosses, I have people I met at jobs. I have as followers a lot of family members, a lot of older family members, some parents of kids I tutor. It just no longer felt like a place where I could freely express myself, and I think that definitely happened a long time ago for Facebook. For a lot of people, I don't even consider my Facebook anymore. I check it maybe once a year. So, but my Instagram, I really wanted it to be somewhere I could post all kinds of things. So my apprehension with sharing it is that I do a lot of boudoir photography with a friend of mine. Sometimes because I want to, sometimes because she asks me, which is always like an honor because I think she's a genius. And I do enjoy doing boudoir photography, not like in the OnlyFans sense, but just as a hobby. Again, I think nudity in like fashion and art are beautiful, and I mean that both like I get something out of doing it as a form of expression, but I also like to consume it as the beholder when other people do it. You know, of course, I have my preferences. There are some versions of it that don't appeal to me, but I do think when done right, and right by my interpretation or by my definition, it's really lovely. And so this same page where I would be inclined to post things about ASMR and my videos and upcoming videos, I would also be posting like that kind of stuff. And not just that, but like videos from traveling, if I ever do that again. Posts about veganism and, you know, what vegans eat. So basically anything I want. I wanted it to be somewhere I could post anything I wanted with no inhibitions. And I just don't have enough of an ASMR following to warrant like a third account just for that. So I've been nervous to mention it. I mean, you can see it, it's Remy Official, it's right above. But at some point when I'm more active on there again, because it's like a ghost town right now, but when I am more active on there, I'm going to be using it in a variety of ways. And I just wouldn't want to offend anyone, or I don't know, have it be a disappointment or have it be disruptive to their experience of me here as an ASMR artist. Because personally, I know, because even though I don't find nudity inherently sexual all the time, and it's not to say I can't be sexual or express my sexuality, but because a lot of people interpret any and all nudity as sexual and potentially offensive, I haven't felt right like pointing people to my Instagram and being like, follow me here for a shock. I also understand and appreciate that there are ASMR artists who bring sexuality into their ASMR. That's not really my thing, because for me ASMR was a coping mechanism for stress and for anxiety, and for me it worked best when it wasn't sexual or sexualized or sexualizing. It felt more safe when it always felt more safe when it was a space apart from those things. So if that's the case for you, I just want to be respectful. It's not to say I haven't played around with some ideas that like allude to human sexuality at all. Like I love role plays. Like Sung Mook has a role play where she's essentially getting you ready to go dance at a strip club, and I find that super relaxing because it's not inherently like sexual. It's just sort of tangential. It's just like an interesting, fun, new context that feels really uplifting of sex work. So I love that, and I wanted to do like getting you ready for your boudoir shoot because that's something I know and I feel like I can do as a role play, but I've held off for all the reasons I've already mentioned. So it's still something I'm working out. I just know that it's probably pretty unrealistic of me to say, hey, I want to compartmentalize my life on the internet, and you're going to look at my Instagram and see me this one way, but when you come onto my ASMR channel on YouTube, we're in a different space. I know that that's unrealistic, and it's just something I'm wrestling with. So I guess what I should say, and what I will always say, is please feel free to follow me on my Instagram. Just know that it's not just an ASMR space. It's not going to be. It's nothing yet. It's, I think I have like 18 followers. But when it is up and running, if I do end up populating it more from this space, I may also be populating it from like the community of people I know who do boudoir photography. I may also be populating it from some modeling stuff or other ventures, other things that I do as hobbies. So yeah, I definitely would appreciate any thoughts you had on that. I feel like really guilty having said it. I don't know why I'm so sure it will like interfere with your enjoyment of my channel to know that I enjoy doing things like that. And maybe it also makes me feel, maybe it also is a me problem. Maybe it's like I'm worried I'll be less safe if people on YouTube have also seen me in this other light. So, something I'm thinking about. Someone just started playing something, so that's probably my cue to go. And I've definitely said a lot of things. Hopefully this has been at all coherent. I just want to acknowledge that David asked, what's your favorite book? And I've named a bunch. Probably my favorite book of all time is a chapter book that I read growing up called Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your comments and for your questions. There were some comments on here that didn't even involve a question. They were just super sweet and super supportive. So I just want to name that I saw those, and I really appreciate them. They're super sweet, and thank you for your support. And thank you for asking questions. I hope I answered them to your satisfaction. And speaking of hopes, I hope you get some good REM sleep, and I hope all your dreams are sweet. Bye. Hi, it's Future Past me again. I actually got one more question since yesterday, and I wanted to include it. So it's actually 4 questions from Big Bug. Hi, Big Bug. Number 1, what is your favorite type or style of ASMR to do and to watch? I love a diverse range of videos. It's not like I'll like every tapping video, but tapping done a certain way, mukbang done a certain way, soft speaking done a certain way, whispering done a certain way. I think I'm less likely to like really aggressive triggers. I do like random and harder triggers, but only to an extent. I'm definitely very suggestible to the way someone talks, so that kind of slowed down, dreamy quality makes me very sleepy, but I also do like just rambles at a normal speed or even faster rambles, because then there's more of a randomized feeling, more of a randomized sense of the sounds they're making. They're just coming at you really fast, almost a little faster than you can process. So yeah, I love rambles with lots of mouth sounds. I love gum chewing. For mukbangs, I think, as silly as it sounds, and I know it makes me seem like a very sensitive, like what some would call a snowflake, but I do tend to be turned off by mukbangs that have a lot of meat. I tend to like more ones that are candies or things like that. Not saying that those things are all necessarily vegan, but like things I can kind of imagine are vegan, if that makes sense. because I don't need them to be vegan mukbangs, but it kind of takes me out of it if it's a really carnist or really like meat-based one. That's just personal. I really feel like I struck gold when I find vegan mukbangs, just because then I can like completely relax. I know that probably sounds really judgmental, and it's not so much a judgment thing as much as it's like I've explained in some videos, but I am just sensitive to those sorts of things. And I know that some people see that as like a character defect. And it's funny because I can go out with friends and, you know, they eat all kinds of different things and I can be in the space with them without being bothered. But I think with ASMR, the point is to like tune in. So if I want it to be completely relaxing, it's probably not going to be watching someone eating chicken wings. Yeah, that's just me personally. I'm always nervous talking about veganism because I think like of the stigmas. I know there's this stereotype of vegans that are like, I'm vegan, and I know I bring it up a lot, but I've always been more of like, I'm vegan, is that okay? And I do like role plays. I think it matters a little less to me, the production value, like lots of big backdrops. I think props and I guess script and the person's vibe are more important to me than the environment around it. If anything, that kind of becomes peripheral. I think that's the point of ASMR for me. It's like you get really zoned into your interaction with one person. Loud neighbor, loves to talk on the phone outside. Think he's a hoot. If that makes sense, everything else kind of falls away, and I almost tend to be distracted by overwrought environments. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's just me. Props, really important, you know. Things that someone is touching help a lot, but I don't really need the lush backgrounds. I'm also not as much one for videos where someone isn't talking. I think I really get ASMR from interpersonal triggers and the way someone talks. And it's great to pepper in some nonverbal triggers or some triggers from tapping, triggers from crinkling. I love that integrated into a ramble or a role play, but yeah, I tend to much prefer ASMR where there's at least some talking. Now, as for ASMR videos that I like to do, I'd like to do a lot more variety. I'd like to do a little bit of everything because I like so many different things and because it's fun to try new things even if it's not a personal trigger, like a trigger for me. I do have a lot of limitations. He's difficult, he's sweet, but he needs to take phone calls outside for some reason, and he's a screamer. He screams his phone conversations. It's quite an obstacle. Yeah, so as I was saying, there are some barriers, there are some obstacles for me to having total control over what I make. So man, he's really hyped up today. I've lost my train of thought. So yeah, it can be difficult to film. So right now it's a little easier for me to just sit down and do a ramble. I think I talked about this a little yesterday, so this may be a little redundant. But I aspire to make a little bit of everything. Wow. Sometimes I think I sound like I'm just complaining for no reason, but you can't make this stuff up. But I do aspire to make a lot of different kinds of ASMR, and then I think from there I'll be able to tell from feedback which types of videos people like best from me, you know, what my strong suits are, because the kinds that I prefer to make and the kinds of ASMR that I myself most enjoy may not necessarily be the kinds that I'm best at. So we'll see. Do you have any pets? I did have a dog. She was a mutt. She was 14 pounds and a mix of a Jack Russell Terrier, a Min Pin, and a Xoloitzcuintli, squeaky, which is a Mexican hairless dog. And she was really weird and funny and sweet, a really special dog. And I lost her in a breakup, so she's still around. I just don't see her at all. Who are your favorite ASMR creators to watch? I answered this earlier, but I am always thinking of more. Today I remembered that I love Minx Laura 123. She's just been putting out so many videos for years now, constantly uploading, and they're very like lo-fi, casual, very intimate and sweet. And she definitely, I think, originated a lot of really good triggers, or she was one of the first people I saw doing a lot of them. So I definitely recommend her channel for a more lo-fi, random experience with a really lovely, warm, sweet, funny person. And you'll definitely get a lot of bang for your subscription buck. Not that you're paying anything, isn't that amazing about this community, but she uploads like constantly. So yeah, just a little more on this. I just wanted to clarify, everyone finds different things offensive. I don't personally find nudity in like art and photography and film. I guess I don't find public nudity offensive. I find it offensive when people like send unsolicited pictures and things like that, of course. But yeah, I don't find public nudity offensive, but I know that many people do. And that's just something to which I want to be sensitive. And then I also have nervousness, like I said, about how it would impact how I'm seen as an ASMR artist. But I just am in a very creative community of people, of photographers, artists, creatives, and in the last few years I've been overcoming my shyness and dabbling in that sort of thing. Sometimes I commission things just for the fun of it, but sometimes I get asked to model, and it's just something I'm exploring at this point in my life. So, do with that what you will. I don't really have a complete or perfect way to discuss this. It makes me nervous, but I just wanted to be honest for anyone who is interested in following me on social media. And as for Twitter, I don't tweet. I'm funny, but not that funny. Okay, so this is it. Thank you so much. Bye. Do you have any pets? I had a dog for a while.